The mysterious arrival. It was a quiet evening in the small town of Riverbend. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and purple as the sun dipped below the horizon. Alex Carter, a young scientist with a curious mind, had decided to take a hike through the nearby forest to clear his thoughts. The chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves were the only sounds accompanying him on his peaceful walk. Suddenly, a blinding light tore through the sky, followed by a loud, deafening roar. Alex froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked up to see what appeared to be a burning object hurtling toward the ground. Within seconds, it crashed into the forest not far from where he stood, shaking the earth beneath his feet. Smoke and faint glowing light rose from the direction of the crash. Against his better judgment, Alex decided to investigate. His curiosity overpowered his fear as he made his way toward the source of the light. The air grew thick with the smell of burnt wood and something metallic. Branches snapped under his boots as he moved closer. What he found left him speechless. In the middle of a small clearing, surrounded by scorched trees, was a strange, egg-shaped pod. It glowed faintly, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. The surface was smooth, and its material looked like nothing Alex had ever seen. As he approached cautiously, the pod emitted a low humming sound. It seemed alive, but not in any way Alex could understand. Peering through a translucent panel on the pod, Alex's eyes widened. Inside was a woman, or at least she looked like one. Her skin was pale and luminous, almost like it was made of light. Her silver hair flowed around her face, and her eyes were closed, as if she were asleep. Strange markings, glowing faintly blue, covered her arms and neck. She looked injured, her expression pained even in unconsciousness. Alex hesitated. Was she human? Was she dangerous? His mind raced with questions, but one thought overpowered them all. She needed help. Without fully knowing why, he pressed his hand against the pod. To his surprise, the panel slid open with a soft hiss. A wave of warm air escaped, carrying a strange but not unpleasant scent. The woman inside stirred weakly, her eyes fluttering open for a brief moment. Alex caught a glimpse of her glowing golden irises before she collapsed again. Her condition looked critical. Alex knew he couldn't leave her here. Whoever, or whatever, she was, she didn't deserve to die alone in the middle of the forest. Gathering his courage, Alex carefully lifted her out of the pod. She was surprisingly light, and her body felt warm, almost too warm, as if she were running a high fever. As he carried her, the strange markings on her skin began to pulse faster, almost like they were reacting to his presence. This unnerved him, but he pushed the thought aside. She needed immediate care, and his lab was the only safe place he could think of. As Alex made his way back through the forest, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and he glanced over his shoulder more than once. The forest, which had felt peaceful earlier, now seemed menacing. Shadows danced in the corners of his vision, and faint, unnatural sounds reached his ears. He quickened his pace, clutching the mysterious woman closer to him. When he finally reached his car, he gently placed her in the back seat, covering her with his jacket. The glowing markings dimmed slightly, almost as if she were calming down. Alex climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine, his hands trembling. As he drove toward his lab, questions swirled in his mind. Who was she? Where had she come from? And more importantly, what had caused her pod to crash? Unbeknownst to Alex, a pair of red, mechanical eyes watched him from the shadows of the forest. A sleek, silent drone hovered in the trees, its camera lens zooming in on the car as it disappeared down the dirt road. The drone sent a signal to an unknown source, and within moments, dark helicopters began to stir in the distance. Alex had no idea that his act of kindness had set a dangerous chain of events into motion. As he drove through the quiet streets of Riverbend, his only focus was on saving the mysterious woman. He didn't realize that by helping her, he had put both their lives in grave danger. Secrets in the lab. Alex's underground lab was his sanctuary, a hidden refuge where he worked on unapproved experiments and studied phenomena that no institution would ever fund. Located beneath an old barn on the outskirts of town, the lab was filled with an array of gadgets, blinking monitors, and stacks of notebooks brimming with his observations. Tonight, however, it was about to become the stage for something far beyond Alex's wildest expectations. The woman lay unconscious on a makeshift examination table. Alex had carefully placed her there, surrounding her with equipment to monitor her vital signs. As the soft glow of her markings illuminated the dim lab, Alex couldn't help but marvel at her otherworldly presence. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and the strange symbols on her body pulsed in rhythmic patterns. "What are you?" Alex whispered to himself, pulling up a chair beside her. He leaned closer, inspecting the markings. They didn't appear to be tattoos or scars. They seemed alive, shifting slightly as if they were reacting to something. He hesitated before reaching out, gently touching one of the glowing symbols on her arm. A sudden jolt of energy shot through his fingers, and Alex pulled back with a sharp gasp. Before he could process what had happened, the monitors began to beep erratically. The woman's eyes fluttered open, and Alex froze. Her golden irises locked onto his, and for a moment, it felt as if time itself had stopped. Then, without warning, a flood of images burst into Alex's mind. Flashes of alien landscapes, towering cities made of crystal, and a dark, sterile room filled with cruel-looking machines. He staggered back, clutching his head. The connection broke as quickly as it had begun, leaving Alex disoriented. The woman groaned softly, her face etched with pain. Alex realized she was trying to communicate, though not with words. She was projecting her thoughts, her memories. "Wait," Alex said, his voice trembling. "Are you showing me where you came from? What happened to you?" The woman struggled to sit up, her glowing markings dimming slightly. She raised a hand, pointing weakly at one of the monitors displaying her vital signs. Alex followed her gaze and noticed the readings were unlike anything he had ever seen. Her heart rate, body temperature, and brain activity were all far beyond human limits. She wasn't just an alien. She was something extraordinary. As Alex tried to make sense of the data, a loud thud echoed from above. He froze, his eyes darting toward the ceiling. Someone, or something, was outside the barn. The woman's markings flared brighter, and her breathing quickened. She was scared. Alex rushed to a control panel and activated the security cameras. The grainy feed showed several black-clad figures moving silently through the barn, armed with high-tech weapons. Their movements were precise, almost robotic. They weren't local law enforcement. These were professionals, and they were here for her. Panic surged through Alex. He turned to the woman, who was now fully alert, her glowing eyes filled with fear. "They're here for you, aren't they?" he whispered. She nodded weakly, confirming his worst fears. Thinking quickly, Alex activated a hidden switch beneath his desk. A section of the lab's floor slid open, revealing a narrow escape tunnel. "We need to get out of here," he said, helping her off the table. She was unsteady on her feet, but she managed to walk with his support. The thudding grew louder as the intruders searched the barn above. Alex knew it was only a matter of time before they found the hidden entrance. As they moved toward the tunnel, he grabbed a small device from his desk, a prototype energy disruptor he had been working on. It wasn't finished, but it might buy them some time. They entered the tunnel, the walls lined with cables and dim emergency lights. The woman clung to Alex, her breathing labored. As they moved deeper into the passage, Alex could hear muffled voices and the sound of heavy boots entering the lab above. His heart raced. Suddenly, the woman stopped, her glowing markings intensifying. She placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, and once again, he was hit with a surge of images. This time, the vision was clear. A dark laboratory where she had been restrained, surrounded by scientists and soldiers. They had subjected her to experiments, drawing blood and extracting energy from her body. She showed him their logo, a triangular insignia with a serpent coiled around it. Alex snapped back to reality, anger and determination replacing his fear. "I don't know who they are, but I won't let them take you back," he said firmly. The woman's markings glowed faintly in response, almost as if she understood and trusted him. Reaching the end of the tunnel, Alex opened a hatch that led into the forest. The cool night air greeted them, but there was no time to rest. The sound of distant helicopters told Alex they weren't safe yet. He helped the woman into his old Jeep, which he had hidden nearby, and started the engine. As they drove away, Alex glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "I don't know how we're going to get through this," he admitted, "but I promise I'll keep you safe." The woman's glowing eyes met his, and for the first time, a faint smile appeared on her lips. Despite the danger, Alex felt a spark of hope. He didn't know where this journey would lead, but he knew one thing for sure. He would do whatever it took to protect her. In the shadows of the forest, a drone hovered silently, tracking their escape. The hunt was far from over. The hunt begins. The sound of the Jeep's engine roared through the dark forest as Alex drove deeper into the wilderness, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Beside him, the alien woman, Lyra, as Alex had started calling her, sat quietly, her glowing eyes scanning their surroundings. She appeared calm on the surface, but the faint flicker in her markings betrayed her unease. Behind them, the night sky was filled with faint beams of light as helicopters combed the area. Alex's heart pounded as he pushed the Jeep harder, navigating the uneven dirt path. The dense canopy of trees above provided some cover, but he knew it wouldn't last forever. "We can't keep running like this," Alex muttered, glancing at Lyra. "They'll find us eventually." Lyra turned her gaze to him, tilting her head slightly. She raised her hand and pointed to her temple. Alex understood. She wanted to show him something. "Now, while we're being hunted?" Alex asked, incredulous. But before he could protest further, Lyra's glowing eyes locked onto his, and his mind was flooded with another vision. This time, it was clearer than ever. He saw a facility, cold and sterile, with rows of tanks filled with creatures, some humanoid, others monstrous. Lyra was one of them, restrained and surrounded by figures in black uniforms, bearing the same triangular insignia he'd seen in her earlier vision. She showed him their experiments, how they drained energy from her body, using it to power advanced weapons and devices. Her tormentors spoke of selling her abilities to the highest bidder. The vision shifted, showing Lyra's daring escape. She had used the last of her strength to break free, stealing the pod that had crash-landed on Earth. It was a desperate act of survival, but now she was being hunted by the same organization that had enslaved her. Alex gasped as the vision ended, his mind reeling from the intensity. "They're not just after you. They want your power," he said, his voice filled with anger. "They'll stop at nothing to get it." Lyra nodded, her expression somber. She gestured toward the forest ahead, as if urging Alex to keep moving. He pressed the gas pedal, determined to put as much distance between them and their pursuers as possible. As they drove, Alex's thoughts raced. He needed a plan, something to give them an edge against their relentless enemies. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He grabbed his phone and called Mia, his tech-savvy best friend and the only person he trusted. "Mia, I need your help," Alex said, his voice urgent. "It's complicated, but I'm in serious trouble." "Trouble? What kind of trouble?" Maya asked, her voice laced with concern. "The kind where helicopters are chasing me through the forest," Alex replied. "I'll explain everything, but I need a safe place to lay low." There was a pause before Mia sighed. "Fine. Come to the old warehouse near the docks. It's secure, and I can help you figure this out." "Thanks, Mia. I owe you," Alex said, ending the call. He turned to Lyra. "Hang tight. We got a place to go." The drive to the warehouse was tense. Alex took back roads, avoiding main highways where the helicopters might spot them. The forest gave way to abandoned industrial buildings as they neared the docks. The warehouse loomed ahead, its rusted exterior blending into the shadows. Mia was waiting for them, her laptop open on a makeshift table surrounded by monitors. She raised an eyebrow as Alex and Lyra entered. "Okay, spill. Who's the glowing alien, and why are the feds after you?" "She's not just an alien," Alex said, quickly recounting what he had learned. Maya listened intently, her eyes narrowing as he described the organization hunting Lyra. When he finished, Maya leaned back in her chair. "So let me get this straight. She's some kind of energy source, and these guys want to use her to power their weapons. That's insane." "It's worse than that," Alex said. "They've already done it to others. She's the only one who escaped." Lyra stepped forward, placing her hand on Mia's laptop. Her markings flared, and the screen flickered before displaying schematics of the facility where she had been held. Maya's jaw dropped. "She just hacked into my system," Maya said, equal parts impressed and alarmed. "Okay, that's cool, but also terrifying." Alex looked at the schematics. "This is where they took her. There must be something we can use against them." Mia nodded, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'll dig deeper, but you need to be careful. If they have this kind of tech, they'll be tracking her energy signature." As if on cue, the monitors beeped, showing multiple drones converging on their location. Alex cursed under his breath. "They're already here." Mia grabbed a small device from her desk and handed it to Alex. "Take this EMP generator. It's experimental, but it might disable their drones long enough for you to escape." "What about you?" Alex asked. "I'll be fine. They're after her, not me," Maya said, already packing up her equipment. "Go, and don't look back." Alex nodded, leading Lyra out of the warehouse and into the night. The drones buzzed overhead, their red lights scanning the area. Alex activated the EMP, and a wave of energy pulsed through the air, causing the drones to sputter and crash to the ground. "We can't keep running forever," Alex said as they slipped into the shadows. Lyra placed a hand on his arm, her eyes filled with a silent determination that told him she was ready to fight. The hunt had begun, but Alex knew one thing for certain. They weren't going down without a fight. The human connection. The sun was beginning to rise, casting a faint glow over the city skyline as Alex and Lyra emerged from the forest's cover. Exhausted but undeterred, they found temporary refuge in a small, abandoned warehouse near the industrial district. Alex parked the jeep behind a stack of rusted containers, making it nearly invisible from the air. Lyra, still weak, leaned against the wall as Alex set up a small workstation with the supplies he had grabbed from Mia before their escape. The room was cold and damp, and the distant hum of factory machinery reminded Alex they weren't completely safe yet. "We can't keep this up, Lyra," Alex said, glancing at her as he connected Mia's portable EMP generator to a power source. "They're tracking us faster than I can think of ways to lose them. I need more information. About you, about them, about how we can stop this." Lyra's golden eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, Alex felt the strange telepathic connection return. This time, however, the images weren't of her past. Instead, they were a jumbled mix of her thoughts, fears, and emotions. He saw a fleeting glimpse of a glowing crystal embedded deep within her chest, a source of immense energy, and understood it was the key to her powers. "Wait," Alex said aloud, stepping back. "That's how they're tracking you, isn't it? That crystal. It's like a beacon." Lyra nodded slowly, her expression apologetic. She touched her chest, as if to confirm his realization, and then gestured toward Alex's workstation. Her movements were deliberate, and Alex realized she was asking for his help. "You want me to mask it?" Alex guessed, his scientific curiosity battling with his rising anxiety. "I don't even know if I can. This isn't just alien tech, it's you. I can't risk hurting you." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her markings glowing faintly in what Alex interpreted as reassurance. She was willing to take the risk. Before Alex could respond, the sound of heavy boots echoed from outside. He quickly peeked through a crack in the wall and saw a group of men in tactical gear moving through the area. Their black uniforms bore the now familiar triangular insignia. "Damn it, they're here," Alex muttered, his mind racing. He turned to Lyra. "We need to move. Again." Lyra shook her head and pointed to the equipment on the table. Her intent was clear. She didn't want to keep running. She wanted Alex to finish the work and give her a chance to fight back. Reluctantly, Alex began assembling a device using the EMP generator, some of Mia's tools, and the components from Lyra's crashed pod. He worked quickly, his hands trembling as the sound of the soldiers grew louder. Lyra stood watch, her glowing markings dimmed to avoid detection. Just as Alex finished calibrating the device, a loud crash came from the warehouse's main entrance. The soldiers had breached the outer door. Alex shoved the makeshift crystal masker into a small metallic casing and handed it to Lyra. "Put this on," he instructed. "It should mask your energy signature, at least for a while." Lyra nodded and pressed the device against her chest. It adhered to her skin, and for the first time since Alex had met her, her glowing markings faded completely. The light in her eyes dimmed as well, making her appear almost human. Alex's breath caught in his throat. Without her glowing aura, Lyra looked fragile, vulnerable. The soldiers entered the warehouse, their weapons drawn. Alex grabbed a crowbar from the table and signaled for Lyra to hide behind a stack of crates. He stepped into the open, his heart pounding, and tried to appear calm. "This is private property," Alex said loudly, hoping to stall them. "You're trespassing." The lead soldier stepped forward, his expression cold. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "We know you have her." Alex forced a smirk. "Her? Who are you talking about? I live alone, in case you didn't notice." The soldier wasn't amused. He raised his weapon, the barrel glowing with a faint blue light. "You're lying. We've been tracking her energy signature. It led us straight to you." Alex's mind raced. If Lyra's energy signature was masked, how had they found her? Then it hit him. They weren't tracking her. They were tracking him. He had spent too much time in close contact with her, and her residual energy had left a trail. Before the soldier could fire, a sudden burst of movement caught everyone's attention. Lyra, silent as a shadow, leaped from her hiding spot and disarmed the nearest soldier with a precision that stunned Alex. Her movements were fluid, almost inhumanly fast, and her strength belied her fragile appearance. The soldiers turned their weapons on her, but Alex activated the EMP device Mia had given him. A shockwave of energy rippled through the warehouse, disabling the soldiers' weapons and causing their communication devices to crackle uselessly. "Run!" Alex shouted, grabbing Lyra's hand. Together, they sprinted toward the back exit, dodging the soldiers who were now scrambling to recover. Outside, the morning light was blinding, but Alex didn't stop. He pulled Lyra into a narrow alley and pressed himself against the wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The soldiers weren't far behind, but they had bought themselves a few precious moments. "We can't keep this up," Alex said, his voice shaking. "We need more help." Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with determination. She reached out and touched his temple again, sending another flood of images into his mind. This time, the vision was different. It showed a group of people, scientists, engineers, and rogue operatives, working in secret to protect beings like her. An underground resistance. Alex whispered as the vision faded. Lyra nodded. Alex's fear was replaced by a flicker of hope. If this resistance was real, they might stand a chance. But first, they needed to find them, and fast. As the sound of approaching vehicles echoed through the alley, Alex tightened his grip on Lyra's hand. "Let's go," he said, leading her into the maze of streets. The fight wasn't over yet, But for the first time, Alex felt like they had a shot at winning. The underground resistance. The safe house was hidden in plain sight, nestled beneath an abandoned subway station that had been out of service for decades. The entrance was cleverly concealed behind a crumbling wall, accessible only through a secret panel disguised as graffiti. Alex had followed Lyra's directions to the location, her telepathic guidance leading him to what he hoped was salvation. As they descended into the dimly lit tunnels, Alex couldn't shake the sense of unease. The resistance, if they were real, could either be their best chance or a dangerous trap. Lyra, walking silently beside him, seemed confident. Her golden eyes scanned the shadows, her movements deliberate but tense. At the bottom of the staircase, they were met by a pair of guards armed with makeshift weapons that looked like a mix of scavenged Earth technology and alien enhancements. The guards raised their weapons, and one of them, a tall woman with a scar running down her cheek, barked, "Stop right there. We're not here to fight." Alex said quickly, raising his hands, "We need help." The woman's eyes narrowed, her gaze shifting to Lyra. Her expression softened slightly, but her weapon remained raised. "How did you find us?" Lyra stepped forward, raising her hand in a peaceful gesture. Her glowing markings, dimmed by Alex's masking device, flickered faintly. The woman's eyes widened in recognition. She exchanged a glance with her partner, then nodded. "Follow me." They were led deeper into the tunnels, past rusting machinery and walls lined with cables. The air smelled of damp earth and old metal. Finally, they entered a large underground chamber filled with activity. Dozens of people worked at makeshift stations, repairing weapons, analyzing data, and coordinating operations. The hum of technology filled the air, a stark contrast to the desolation above. At the center of the room stood a man who exuded authority. He was middle-aged, with sharp features and a prosthetic arm that glowed faintly with alien tech. His piercing blue eyes locked onto Alex and Lyra as they approached. "You must be Alex," the man said, his voice calm but commanding. "I'm Marcus, leader of the Resistance. We've been expecting you." Alex blinked in surprise. "You knew we were coming?" Marcus nodded, his expression grim. Lyra's escape didn't go unnoticed. When the organization ramped up their operations, we knew they'd slip eventually. Your arrival confirms that they're getting desperate. Lyra stepped forward, her gaze steady. She touched Marcus's prosthetic arm, and he winced slightly before nodding. "She's asking if you'll help us," Alex interpreted, realizing their connection wasn't limited to him. Marcus's eyes softened. "We'll do everything we can, but you need to understand, what you've brought to us is bigger than you realize." He gestured to a large monitor displaying satellite images and encrypted files. The organization chasing Lyra, known as Apex Dynamics, isn't just experimenting on extraterrestrials. They're building weapons capable of reshaping the balance of power on this planet. Lyra's energy isn't just a source of power. It's the key to unlocking technologies we can't even begin to comprehend. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. So, they're not just after her to study her. They want to use her to control everything. "Exactly," Marcus said. "That's why we've been preparing for this moment. With Lyra's help, we can expose them and shut them down." Before Alex could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. Red lights flashed, and the hum of activity shifted into chaos. "They found us," a voice shouted. Marcus cursed under his breath. "How?" "The tunnels are shielded." Alex's heart sank as realization dawned. "It's me," he admitted. "They've been tracking residual energy from my contact with Lyra. I thought the masking device was enough." But Marcus didn't waste time with blame. "Get Lyra to the safe room," he ordered. "We'll hold them off." Alex grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her toward a reinforced door at the far end of the chamber. The guards opened it, ushering them inside just as the first explosions rocked the underground base. The sound of gunfire and shouting filled the air as apex dynamics forces breached the tunnels. Inside the safe room, Alex turned to Lyra. "This isn't just about saving you anymore," he said, his voice shaking. "We have to fight back." Lyra nodded, her glowing markings intensifying. She placed her hands on a console in the safe room, her energy surging through the system. The monitors lit up, displaying Apex's network. Alex watched in awe as she began transmitting data, locations of their facilities, names of their leaders, and evidence of their experiments. "She's giving us everything," Alex whispered. "But it's risky. They'll know she's doing it." Outside, the sounds of the battle grew louder. Marcus's voice came through the intercom. "We're holding them off, but we can't hold forever. Whatever you're doing, do it fast." Lyra's markings glowed brighter, her energy overwhelming the safe room systems. Sparks flew from the console, and Alex realized she was pushing herself to the limit. "Lyra, stop. You're going to burn out." But Lyra didn't stop. She turned to Alex, her eyes filled with resolve, and projected one final image into his mind. A plan to destroy Apex Dynamics. It was dangerous and nearly impossible, but it was their only chance. The monitors flickered as the data transmission completed. Lyra collapsed, her glowing markings fading to a faint shimmer. Alex caught her before she hit the floor, his heart pounding. "Lyra, stay with me," he pleaded. The intercom crackled. "Alex, we're out of time. They're breaching the safe room," Marcus warned. Clutching Lyra tightly, Alex stood, determination hardening his features. "Then let's give them a fight they'll never forget." The door began to shake as Apex's forces attempted to break through. Alex looked down at Lyra, her faint glow a reminder of everything they were fighting for. He knew they couldn't give up. Not now, not ever. The Resistance's fight was just beginning. The final stand. The reinforced door groaned under the relentless assault of Apex Dynamics forces. Sparks flew as soldiers used plasma cutters to breach the safe room, their voices shouting over the din of battle. Alex held Lyra close, her body limp but still faintly glowing. Her markings pulsed weakly, a sign that her energy was depleted but not gone. "Marcus, we need a way out." Alex shouted into the intercom, his voice edged with desperation. Static crackled before Marcus's voice came through. "The secondary tunnels. There's an emergency hatch behind the console. Use it to escape, but hurry. They're swarming us." Alex glanced at the console where Lyra had uploaded the data. Behind it, partially concealed by debris, was a panel marked with faint etchings. He laid Lyra gently on the floor and rushed to pry it open. Inside was a narrow tunnel, barely large enough to crawl through. "Lyra, come on," Alex urged, returning to her side. He hoisted her up, her slender frame feeling heavier with every second of mounting tension. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, meeting his with a flicker of determination. "She's still with me," Alex muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He guided her into the tunnel and followed, pulling the panel shut behind them, just as the safe room door gave way with a deafening crash. The tunnel was dark and suffocating, but Alex pressed forward, his knees scraping against the rough floor. Lyra, though weakened, began to move on her own, her glow illuminating the narrow passage. Each pulse of light was faint but steady, giving Alex hope that she hadn't given up. The distant sound of gunfire and explosions echoed through the tunnel, a grim reminder of the battle raging above. Alex's heart sank as he thought of Marcus and the Resistance fighters holding the line. They were buying him and Lyra time, but at what cost? After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a large underground chamber. Unlike the chaotic Resistance base, this room was eerily quiet. Its walls were lined with alien machinery, humming softly. In the center stood a sleek, egg-shaped structure similar to the pod Lyra had crash-landed in. "What is this place?" Alex whispered, helping Lyra to her feet. Lyra gestured weakly toward the structure, her markings glowing faintly. Alex hesitated, then approached the pod. As he drew closer, it powered up, emitting a low hum. Symbols appeared on its surface, and Alex realized it was responding to Lyra's presence. This must be a backup escape vessel, Alex guessed, piecing it together. They must have had a contingency plan in case something went wrong. Lyra touched the pod, and a holographic interface sprang to life. She pressed her hand against it, and a flood of alien symbols and data filled the air. Alex couldn't understand the details, but he understood her intent. This wasn't just an escape vessel, it was a weapon. "Wait, you're going to use this against Apex, aren't you?" Alex asked, his voice laced with concern. Lyra nodded, her markings glowing brighter as her energy began to synchronize with the pod. Before Alex could say more, the chamber trembled. A distant explosion sent dust raining from the ceiling. Apex forces were closing in. The pod's interface flickered, and a countdown appeared, its alien numerals ticking down ominously. "Lyra, whatever you're planning, you need to be careful," Alex said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "You don't have to do this alone." Lyra turned to him, her golden eyes filled with emotion. She touched his temple, and in an instant, Alex saw her plan. The pod could unleash a massive energy pulse that would disable all of Apex's advanced technology, rendering their weapons and drones useless. But the cost was enormous. It would require Lyra to channel the last of her energy into the pod, potentially killing her. "No," Alex said firmly, shaking his head. "We'll find another way. I won't let you sacrifice yourself." Lyra smiled faintly, a silent gratitude shining in her eyes. She pressed her hand to his chest, conveying a final message: "Believe in what we can do together." The chamber trembled again as Apex soldiers burst through a nearby access point. Alex's instincts kicked in. He grabbed a nearby piece of alien equipment, a weapon Lyra had highlighted in her earlier vision, and took cover behind the pod. The first soldier entered, his weapon raised, but Alex fired before he could react. A pulse of energy struck the soldier, knocking him unconscious. More soldiers poured in, but Alex held his ground, buying Lyra time to finish her synchronization with the pod. "Come on, Lyra," Alex muttered under his breath as he fired another shot. "We're running out of time." Finally, the pod emitted a low, resonating hum, its surface glowing with an intensity that filled the chamber. Lyra stood at its center, her markings now shining like a beacon. She turned to Alex, her expression resolute. "Do it," Alex said, understanding her decision. "But come back to me." Lyra pressed her hand against the pod, and the countdown reached 0. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the pod, spreading through the chamber and beyond. Alex shielded his eyes as the wave passed over him, feeling a strange warmth instead of pain. When the light faded, the chamber was silent. The Apex soldiers lay unconscious, their weapons rendered useless. The alien machinery hummed faintly, a sign that the pod had completed its task. Alex turned to where Lyra had been, his heart pounding. She lay on the floor, her markings dim but still faintly glowing. He rushed to her side, cradling her in his arms. "Lyra," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You did it. You saved us." Her eyes fluttered open, and she smiled weakly before slipping back into unconsciousness. Alex held her tightly, tears streaming down his face. The fight wasn't over, but they had won this battle. Together, they had dealt a crippling blow to Apex dynamics. As the distant sounds of helicopters faded, Alex knew their journey was far from over. But for the first time, he felt hope. Hope that they could finish what they had started and create a future worth fighting for. Freedom and sacrifice. The chamber was eerily quiet, the faint hum of the pod the only sound breaking the stillness. Alex sat on the cold floor, cradling Lyra in his arms. Her glowing markings had faded to a faint shimmer, a stark reminder of the enormous energy she had just unleashed to disable Apex Dynamics forces. "Lyra, stay with me," Alex whispered, his voice filled with both desperation and hope. Her eyelids fluttered, But she didn't wake. He could feel her faint pulse, a fragile rhythm that told him she was alive. For now, the silence was broken by a distant rumble. Marcus's voice crackled through Alex's communicator, distorted but recognizable. "Alex, status report. Did you make it?" Alex pressed the device to his lips. "We're alive." "Lyra, she did it. The energy pulse took out their tech. But we need help. She's..." His voice faltered as he glanced at her fragile form. "She's not doing well." There was a pause before Marcus responded, his tone grim. "Hold tight. We're regrouping." The pulse hit their entire network. Drones, vehicles, communications. "It's chaos up here, but we'll get to you. Just hold on." Alex sighed in relief, though the weight of uncertainty still pressed heavily on his chest. He gently placed Lyra down and inspected the pod. The alien device still emitted a soft glow, its surface etched with complex patterns. It had saved them, but Alex couldn't ignore the ominous cracks forming along its structure. The pod had been pushed to its limits, just like Lyra. A faint noise drew Alex's attention. He turned to see one of the apex soldiers stirring, their weapons sparking uselessly on the ground. The soldier's helmet was cracked, revealing a face twisted with pain and confusion. Alex's first instinct was to raise his makeshift weapon, but he hesitated. "We're done here," Alex said firmly, stepping between the soldier and Lyra. "Your tech's gone. Your mission failed. Walk away." The soldier groaned, glancing at Alex and then at the disabled pod. Finally, he dropped his weapon and staggered toward the exit, his movements slow and unsteady. Alex didn't stop him. They had already won this fight. Minutes felt like hours as Alex waited, his gaze never leaving Lyra. Her breathing was shallow, her once brilliant markings barely visible. He clenched his fists, frustration and helplessness coursing through him. She had given everything to save them, and now her life hung by a thread. "Come on, Marcus," Alex muttered under his breath. "Where are you?" At last, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the chamber. Marcus and a small group of resistance fighters emerged from the shadows, their expressions a mix of relief and urgency. Behind them, Mia appeared, her face pale but determined. "Alex," Mia called out, rushing to his side. Her eyes widened as she saw Lyra. She looks bad. She used the pod to disable their entire network," Alex explained quickly. "It took everything she had." Marcus knelt beside Lyra, his prosthetic hand gently scanning her with a device that emitted a soft, blue light. "Her energy levels are critically low. If we don't stabilize her, she won't make it." Alex's heart sank. There has to be a way. She didn't come this far just to. Mia placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll figure something out. We always do." Marcus glanced at the damaged pod. This thing's shot, but there might still be enough residual energy to help her. "It's risky, but we can try transferring some of its power back to her." "I'll do it," Alex said immediately. "Just tell me what to do." Marcus nodded, his expression grim. "If this goes wrong, the feedback could kill you both." "Are you sure?" "She risked everything for us," Alex said without hesitation. "I'm not losing her." With Marcus's guidance, Alex connected a series of cables from the pod to a small device Marcus had brought. The device emitted a soft hum as it activated, its lights flickering uncertainly. Alex carefully placed the device against Lyra's chest, where her markings glowed faintly. The transfer began. The room was filled with a soft, golden light as the pod's energy flowed into Lyra. Alex watched, his breath held, as her markings began to brighten. For a moment, hope surged in his chest. Then the pod shuddered violently, sparks flying from its surface. The light flickered, and Lyra's body jolted as the transfer intensified. Alex reached out, gripping her hand tightly. "Come on, Lyra," he whispered. "Stay with me." The pod emitted a final, blinding flash before going dark. The device in Alex's hand powered down, leaking the room in silence. He looked at Lyra, his heart pounding. Her markings were glowing faintly again, and her breathing had stabilized. "She's alive," Marcus confirmed, scanning her vitals. "But she needs time to recover." Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him. He cradled Lyra gently, his voice soft. "You did it, Lyra. You saved us." As the resistance fighters secured the area and began gathering the remaining Apex soldiers, Mia approached Alex. "We've got everything we need to expose Apex," she said, holding up a small drive. "Their secrets, their experiments, it's all here. They won't recover from this." Alex nodded, though his focus remained on Lyra. "Then let's make sure this was worth it." Hours later, as the resistance regrouped in a new safe house, Lyra opened her eyes. Her markings glowed softly, a sign that her energy was slowly returning. She looked at Alex, her expression one of gratitude and relief. "We're not done yet," Alex said, smiling. "But together, we can finish this." Lyra smiled faintly, her golden eyes shining with determination. The fight against Apex wasn't over, but for the first time, Alex felt like they had a real chance. Together, they had faced the impossible and won. And together, they would ensure a future where no one, human or alien, would ever have to suffer again. As they prepared for the next phase of their journey, Alex knew one thing for certain. They were stronger together, and no force in the universe could stand against them.